Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the crowded, dimly lit streets of ancient Rome, not to admire temples or marvel at emperors, but to snack. Yes, you're about to time travel to a world where fast food didn't come wrapped in paper, but ladled out of terracotta pots. You'll wander among candlelit stalls, elbow your way through toga-wearing locals, and sniff out treats you've probably never imagined eating. You probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes there without questioning every single bite. Before we begin tonight's journey through history, I have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this peaceful corner of the past, please consider giving the video a like or subscribing to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming nighttime adventures. It truly helps this little channel grow, and it means so much to me. If you're still awake enough to type a few words, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I find it so heartwarming to see history gently unfolding across time zones, quietly shared together. I sincerely hope this historical story is gentle enough to ease you into sleep, but there's always a small risk. It might be too interesting. And if you do happen to stay awake through the whole thing, at least you'll walk away with a bit of new knowledge. And if that's what keeps you up tonight, well, I'd say that's worth it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a Roman alley just after dusk. The sun has dipped behind the tiled rooftops, casting long golden shadows over crumbling columns and carved fountains. Lamps flicker to life along the stone pathways, fueled by olive oil and wicks that sputter gently in the breeze. You smell it before you see it: smoke, spice, something sizzling, and a hint of vinegar. Your stomach murmurs, even if your curiosity speaks louder. The night market is alive. Rome, in all its imperial grandeur, wasn't just about forums and philosophies. No. After the last Senate debate wrapped, and before the baths closed their gates, the real Rome emerged here, in the cramped little corners between stone tenements and bustling crossways. And it smelled like dinner. As you make your way toward the glowing stalls, the clamor of wooden wheels on cobbles fades behind you. This is a pedestrian world now, one where food is cooked inches from where it's eaten, and the line between vendor and diner blurs into smoke and laughter. You pass a squat man with a huge pot balanced over open flames. He's stirring something with a carved wooden paddle and muttering about ash falling into the stew. The pot bubbles ominously. Beside him, a boy, maybe 10, maybe 40. It's hard to tell with the soot on his face, juggles cups of spiced wine with surprising agility. A line has formed, mostly soldiers and dusty workers, their hands already outstretched with a few worn coins. You continue down the lane, each corner offering a new scent, a new shout. One vendor slices hot sausages with a blade that seems better suited to battle than bacon. Another is grilling fish, or what's left of it, over a grate fashioned from bent bronze rods. The smell? Somewhere between the sea and your least favorite uncle's sandals. But then you catch it, something warm, savory, and just a little sweet. You follow the scent until you spot a modest cart wedged between a bread seller and a man loudly claiming to have invented olives. The cart is covered in a rough linen cloth, slightly stained but full of promise. On it sits a deep clay pot, bubbling with oil. Inside, little bites of something, dough, cheese, lizard, are being fried to a golden crisp. The vendor notices you watching. He grins, revealing a gold tooth and a few that clearly couldn't handle Rome's more acidic delicacies. "Try one," he says, plucking a piece from the pot with tongs that once might have been hairpins. He presses it into a square of fig leaf and hands it over. It's hot, really hot. But the smell is heavenly, like toasted herbs and warm cheese, with a whisper of honey. You bite, it's crunchy, chewy, then unexpectedly soft in the middle. You nod, and he nods back, as if to say, "See? Told you." You buy 3 more. A few steps later, you come upon a crate flipped sideways, doubling as a makeshift bench. A woman is already seated there, nursing a cup of wine the color of rust. Her sandals are loose, her feet dusty. She notices your snack and raises her own, a cone of waxy paper filled with spiced nuts. "Roasted in honey and garum," she says. "It's an acquired taste. Garum. There it is, the sauce you've heard rumors about. The liquid gold, or liquid horror, depending on whom you ask, of Roman cuisine. Made from fermented fish guts and aged in the sun, garum was Rome's favorite flavor enhancer. They put it on everything, meats, vegetables, even fruit, even dessert." The woman pops another nut into her mouth and chews thoughtfully. "It's like licking the sea, but with sugar," she muses. You nod slowly. Historians still argue whether garum was more prized for its taste or its intimidating effect on enemies. Some scholars even claim entire fortunes were built on garum empires, with different grades sold like modern wine, the best for the rich, the worst for slaves and soldiers. What you're eating? Probably somewhere in the middle. From behind you, someone begins singing. It's a slow, lilting tune, perhaps Greek, perhaps nonsense. You follow the sound and find a man with a half-empty jug of wine and a basket full of figs. He's dunking them into something thick and syrupy, then handing them out to passers-by who don't ask questions. You take one because, why not? It's sticky, a little too sticky. The fig bursts with sweetness, then smacks you with a tangy punch of vinegar. Is that mustard?" You blink. He laughs. "You like?" he asks. "Very fashionable, very expensive." You're not sure what to say, so you just smile, chewing slowly, letting the quiet chaos of the Roman market swirl around you. And in that moment, surrounded by odd flavors, flickering flames, and the warm chatter of long-dead voices, you realize something beautiful. This is Rome, not as written by poets or carved into marble, but as tasted, smelled, and savored. The Rome of cravings, of midnight bites, of very questionable food safety standards. And you're just getting started. You keep walking, your sandals brushing softly against the worn stones as the market thickens with bodies and aromas. Rome isn't just feeding your hunger tonight. It's pulling you deeper into its belly, into the strangely alluring world of ancient junk food. And the next discovery? Well, let's just say it leaves an unforgettable scent lingering in the air. You stop at a stall covered with wooden planks and patch linen awnings, its surfaces slick with use. The man behind the counter is energetic, slightly unshaven, and wearing an apron that has clearly lost several battles against grease. He lifts a ladle and pours something over a chunk of cold roast meat. Instantly, the smell makes you lean back. It's sharp, fishy, and just a little sour. He notices your reaction. "Ah, garum," he announces proudly. "Better than salt, better than herbs. Romans say it wakes the dead." You smile politely, but your nose twitches. He leans closer, as if sharing a secret. "Want to try it on sweet cheese fritters? Trust me. Sweet and fish sauce." You watch as he scoops up a small, golden pastry, light and spongy, shaped like a half moon, and drenches it with a drizzle of garum mixed with honey. The pastry itself looks innocent enough, like something you'd expect from a cozy bakery. But this isn't your grandmother's treat. This is Rome, and Rome loves mixing the expected with the questionable, with hesitant courage. You take a bite. The first thing you notice is the softness. The cheese inside is airy and warm. Then the sweetness kicks in, pleasant and familiar. But then comes the garum. It creeps in at the end like a prankster hiding behind a curtain. Fishy, funky, salty enough to dry your tongue. Somehow, it works. Kind of. If you don't think about it too much, you nod again. This time, the vendor grins. Told you, it's an acquired delight. As you chew, he tells you that this mixture was once a hit at parties for Roman elites. They liked contrast in every bite, sweet and salty, creamy and sharp, soft and fried. Roman palates weren't shy. They chased flavor like chariots chase glory. Even poor people, he adds, lowering his voice as if sharing family gossip, dropped garum on plain porridge to feel fancy. Historians still argue whether garum was truly delicious or just wildly fashionable. Some claim people used it out of habit, the way you might use ketchup on fries, even when the fries don't need it. Others insist the flavor was layered and addictive, a badge of culinary pride. Whatever the truth, in this moment, you can't deny its presence. It's in the air. It's in your snack. It might even be on your sleeve, wiping your hands. You thank the vendor and move on, the sound of sizzling meat fading behind you. You round a corner and stumble upon a row of wooden counters carved into the walls of a small building. This isn't just another street stall. This is a thermopolium, one of Rome's earliest versions of a fast food diner. Each counter is inlaid with deep round holes, and inside, each one sits a steaming pot. You lean closer and peer into the bubbling contents, lentils in one, fish stew in another, spiced sausages, and even wine that smells suspiciously stronger than anything you'd find at a dinner party. A boy, no older than 14, greets you with a shy nod. Hot food, he says, fast and fresh. You're tempted to ask how fresh, but you hold your tongue. He ladles some thick lentils into a rough clay bowl, topping it with chopped herbs and what looks like crumbled goat cheese. Next to it, he offers a slice of flatbread, still warm from the fire. The bread's edges are charred, and you spot a smear of olive paste along its center. It smells deeply satisfying. You take the bowl, sit at a low bench beneath an arched doorway, and eat, slowly. The lentils are creamy and spiced with something earthy, maybe cumin, maybe ground coriander. The cheese melts slightly, and the bread sops up the sauce with enthusiasm. For a moment, it's quiet, peaceful, until a commotion erupts down the alley. Two vendors are shouting, waving their arms over a smoking grill. You glance up to see what's wrong. One is red-faced and pointing at a sausage. The other is holding a wooden skewer defensively like a fencing foil. Apparently, someone's stolen a recipe or overcooked a rival's meat on purpose. The younger vendor shouts, "You call that a sausage? Even the dogs spit it out." The older man responds with something in Latin that sounds deeply personal. You chuckle quietly and return to your meal. Welcome to the culinary politics of Rome. A man next to you offers a mug of wine, and you politely decline. You're still recovering from the fish honey experiment. He shrugs and downs it himself, then wipes his beard with his sleeve and says, "Thermopolia feed more than hunger. They feed gossip, secrets, love affairs." He raises an eyebrow. Murders, too, sometimes. You nod slowly, not sure whether that's a joke. He doesn't clarify. Roman Thermopolia, you realize, were more than just lunch spots. They were hubs where people met, argued, fell in love, or simply watched life pass. Like modern cafes, but with fewer lattes and more sword fights. You finish your lentils and thank the boy. He smiles, his teeth stained faintly purple from the wine steam. "Come back tomorrow," he says. "We're boiling goat head stew." You smile, politely. As you rise, a new aroma wafts from a different stall nearby. Something sharp, smoky, and rich. It beckons like a whisper through the fog. You follow it, drawn into another alleyway. where a woman is frying chickpeas in oil seasoned with garlic, herbs, and a pinch of pepper. She scoops them out with a slotted spoon and dumps them into a waxed paper cone. Snack of champions, she tells you, and senators, you crunch down. The outer shell is crisp, the inside soft and earthy. The garlic hits first, then the pepper dances on your tongue. It's oddly familiar, like something you'd find in a paper bag at a modern street fair. It feels timeless. You wonder how many Romans wandered these streets with mouths full of fried chickpeas, dodging puddles and chasing flavor under the glow of flickering oil lamps. You picture toga, hems dragging through dust, tunics stained with wine, children snatching bites behind their mothers' backs. The scene, in all its messy beauty, belongs to every era, and tonight, it belongs to you. The oil crackles again, snapping you out of your thoughts. You thank the vendor, cone in hand, and stroll forward into the glowing hush of the Roman evening, belly warmed, curiosity piqued, and still just a little wary of the next garum surprise waiting around the bend. You wander farther down the winding alley, letting the soft crunch of fried chickpeas echo faintly behind you. The streets have quieted just a little now. There's still chatter, laughter, and the occasional clang of a vendor's pan, but the frenzy is ebbing, like a tide pulling back after a noisy wave. Rome is never still. Not truly, but it does know how to lull. A few turns later, you find yourself drawn toward a group of men seated on wide stone steps. They're big, broad-shouldered, and coated in a mixture of sweat and dust. Their tunics cling to them like damp sails, and their forearms are wrapped in linen, bruised and raw. One of them stretches, cracking his back loudly, while another is wiping grime off his forehead with a bit of torn cloth. You don't need anyone to tell you who they are. Gladiators. They're surrounded by baskets, some full of fruit, others of bread, and one in the center heaped with what looks like a sticky mass of barley, nuts, and honey. One of the fighters grabs a handful of the mixture and presses it into a compact ball before popping it into his mouth with a satisfied grunt. A younger one notices you watching and gestures toward the basket. "Food of champions," he says. Not pretty, but it does the job. You step closer, and he offers a small handful. It's warm from the sun, dense, and smells faintly of cinnamon and roasted grains. You roll a bit between your fingers. It's heavy, sticky, and only vaguely sweet. You take a bite. It's chewy, almost stubbornly so, and the flavor is subtle. Barley paste, mashed dates, maybe a few pine nuts and raisins cling into the corners. It's not delicious. Not really, but it's satisfying. Honest. And as the gladiator says, it does the job. Gives us strength, he adds, thumping his chest. Barley for the body, honey for the blood. Then he points to a jug nearby. And that's for the soul. The jug contains pasca, the beloved Roman soldier's drink. It's a curious concoction, a mix of water, vinegar, and herbs. You take a cautious sip. It's sharply sour at first, almost enough to pucker your entire face. But then the herbaceous notes creep in, thyme, maybe rosemary, and it suddenly feels cooling, almost medicinal. Gladiators drank pasca to stay hydrated. Soldiers too. Some said it kept disease away. Others drank it just because it was cheaper than wine. Historians still argue whether pasca was valued for its taste or just its practicality. Either way, it's unmistakably Roman, sharp, useful, and a little bit strange. You sit for a moment on the edge of the stone step, the warmth of the street pressing gently into your spine. The gladiators speak in short bursts of Latin, tossing grapes into each other's mouths and laughing like boys at camp. Despite the bruises and the weight of their armor nearby, they seem relaxed, almost giddy. Perhaps it's the relief of surviving another day in the arena. Or maybe it's just the barley talking, One of them leans over and nudges you with a knuckle. "You eat like a Roman now," he says with a crooked grin. "You'll be fighting lions next." You laugh, and the sound feels easy, like something familiar. As you stand and say your thanks, the sky above you is darkening further, stars beginning to blink through the veil of Rome's smoke and torchlight. The scent of meat and oil still drifts in the air, but there's something else now, something sweeter. You follow your nose again, slipping past shuttered doorways and dozing cats curled in ceramic pots. Eventually, you find her. A woman standing beside a small cart adorned with ribbons and dried flowers. She's humming softly and turning skewers of something golden over a shallow brazier. On closer inspection, you see that the skewers hold libum, small, round cheesecakes made from ricotta-like cheese and flour, then glazed in honey and cooked until just crisp on the outside. They're sold warm, 2 for a denarius, and wrapped in vine leaves. You accept one with a quiet thank you and sink your teeth into it. The outside crackles softly, giving way to a creamy, rich center. The honey has caramelized just enough to deepen its flavor, and there's a faint whisper of bay leaf baked into the dough. It's the kind of treat that doesn't need explanation. It just makes sense. The vendor smiles knowingly. "For the gods and the hungry," she says, flipping another skewer with care. You learn that libum cakes were sometimes used as offerings in temples, but more often they were eaten on the street, on balconies, by children sneaking sweets behind their mothers' backs. The gods may have approved, but only after the Romans took their share first. Another man walks by, juggling small baskets of figs. He winks at the vendor and tosses her one before disappearing into the night. You linger a little longer, savoring the warmth of the cake and the comfort of her fire. This moment, quiet, sweet, unhurried, feels like the kind of memory that clings to you long after the rest of the night fades. No marble statue could capture it. No scroll would bother recording it. But here, with honey on your lips and the stars overhead, it matters. Rome, you realize, isn't always about conquest or philosophy. Sometimes it's just about finding a really good cake after sundown. You walk on again, letting the torch-lit street guide your steps. Somewhere nearby, a drunk man is singing off-key. A dog barks in the distance. A woman laughs, sharp and sudden. The city breathes around you, vibrant even as it winds down. And though your stomach is beginning to feel the gentle pressure of fullness, your curiosity still hasn't settled. Not yet. Because in ancient Rome, just when you think you've tried it all, there's always something stranger waiting around the next corner. The libum cake leaves a soft sweetness lingering on your tongue as you stroll farther into the belly of the city. Rome at night is a slow-burning fire, steady and warm, full of strange stories hiding in the flicker of shadows. The air smells different now, not just of fried snacks and grilled meats, but something more curious, something vinegary and sweet, almost floral. You pause, nose tilted, trying to follow it, and there it is. A vendor is standing beside a tall clay jug, its wide mouth wrapped in cloth, steam curling lazily from the top. Beside him is a row of shallow bowls stacked neatly, and just behind, a wooden shelf with rows of small amphorae filled with golden liquid. He gestures to the jug, lifting the cloth with flair, and the aroma punches through. Wine, yes, but thickened with honey, herbs, and a tartness that makes your mouth water. He calls it mulsum, and apparently, it's quite the morning drink. Yes, morning. The Romans had a curious habit of drinking sweetened wine at breakfast. Mulsum was one of their favorites, a blend of cheap or sour wine, mellowed with honey and sometimes scented with lavender or thyme. It wasn't just about pleasure. They believed it warmed the belly, strengthened the voice, and Depending on whom you asked, even improved digestion. You cradle the shallow bowl he offers you and take a cautious sip. It's stronger than you expect. The honey smooths out the roughness of the wine, but it still carries a kick, like the sun breaking through clouds on a chilly day. The herbs sit just at the edge of the flavor, almost teasing the back of your throat. It's warming, strange, comforting, in a chaotic kind of way. A woman beside you, wrapped in a thin wool shawl, leans over. "Better than coffee," she says with a wink. You smile, not entirely convinced, but you take another sip anyway. The idea of sipping wine at sunrise might seem absurd in your world, but here in Rome, it's a form of self-care. Behind the counter, the vendor is preparing something else now. He pulls out a little bowl of crushed nuts, drizzles in a syrup made from boiled grape must, called defrutum, and stirs it into a sticky, sweet sludge. He spreads it onto a slice of coarse bread and hands it off to a man who eats it in 2 bites and licks his fingers clean. "Breakfast of scribes," the vendor calls out. It doesn't take long before you're offered a sample yourself. The bread is dense and a little stale, but the defrutum makes up for it. Dark, rich, almost like molasses with a whisper of wine. The crushed nuts add a bit of texture, though you can't tell if they're almonds or just cleverly disguised acorns. Either way, it's oddly satisfying. You begin to understand the rhythm of this city, of its snacking habits. It's not about meals, not really, not in the strict sense. Rome is a place where food is stitched into every hour, every corner. Here, hunger isn't scheduled, it's answered. You keep walking, and your next encounter is loud. A barefoot boy, no older than 12, is yelling at the top of his lungs in a sing-song chant. Toasted peas, fried chickpeas, crunch for your coin, joy for your jaw. He carries a wide wooden tray slung around his neck, and on it are piles of tiny golden snacks. Some are chickpeas, roasted to a crisp. Others are little clusters of popped grains, puffed up like primitive popcorn. A few are dusted with what looks like black pepper, or charcoal. You stop him with a coin, and he grins with the mischief of someone who's been scolded more times than he can count. He scoops a handful into a paper cone and hands it to you. The peas are still warm from the embers, and they crunch like little bursts of history, salty, oily, with just a hint of garlic. You can't stop chewing. "People eat these in the Senate, you know," the boy says proudly, adjusting his tray. Quiet snacks for loud arguments. You imagine toga-clad men debating law and war while secretly crunching chickpeas beneath their robes. It's a funny image, one you'll carry with you. Historians still argue whether such snacks were eaten more by the poor or the elite, but the truth seems to be both. Rome's street foods were great equalizers. Flavor wasn't bound by class. The same fried peas could fill a senator's pocket or a farmer's belly. You toss him another coin for a second helping. He salutes, then disappears into the crowd, shouting about crunchy peas for clever minds. Farther along, you hear the sound of oil popping, louder than before, sharper. You follow it instinctively and find a man turning what looks like flattened dough in a bubbling pot. He's dropping small rounds of batter into the oil with a practiced flick of his fingers, letting them puff up until golden brown. A woman beside him is brushing them with something shiny, maybe honey, maybe syrup, maybe both. "Panis frictus," he announces with a smile. "Fried bread, nothing fancy, but the gods don't complain." You take one, it's warm and airy on the inside, crisp on the outside, and sticky with a honey glaze that coats your fingers. There's a whisper of citrus, or maybe it's just your imagination. It tastes familiar, ancient and modern at once. A little girl tugs at her mother's tunic nearby and points to the pan. "Can we have the ones with the cheese?" she asks. The vendor nods and pulls out another batch, this time filled with a soft, white cheese in the center. A sweet, savory surprise. The little girl's eyes widen as she bites in, cheeks puffed with pleasure. Her mother just sighs, shaking her head. "You'll spoil your appetite," she mutters, but she's already reaching for one herself. You linger by the stall a little longer, letting the glow of the fire warm your hands. Around you, Rome continues to hum, footsteps on stone, whispers of trade, a gentle argument about politics drifting from a nearby doorway. The food sizzles and smokes. The night presses closer, and even though you've eaten more than any reasonable person should, your curiosity pulls you forward again, because you're starting to suspect there's no such thing as done when it comes to Roman junk food. There's always one more taste, one more surprise waiting at the next stall, and tonight, you're here for all of it. You let the last bite of fried bread melt slowly in your mouth, savoring the honey as it clings to your tongue like a gentle farewell. Rome continues to buzz around you, less frenzied than before, but still very much alive. The lanterns above cast long, drowsy shadows now, and the smoke from a dozen fires blurs the stars into watercolor streaks. You keep walking, drawn forward by instinct more than hunger. At the end of a narrow alley, tucked between a crumbling wall and a shuttered laundry, you spot a small wooden cart. It's lopsided, worn, and barely illuminated by the flickering torch stuck awkwardly in the ground nearby. But the smell, oh, the smell, sweet, thick, a little burnt, like molasses with a secret. A young man with a crooked smile and soot-covered arms stirs a shallow pan over coals. Inside, something dark and bubbling clings to slices of fruit, mostly figs and apples, which he flips with practiced ease. Nearby, another bowl is filled with what looks like coarse sugar, though it glitters strangely in the light. You ask him what he's making, and he answers proudly, "Ficadum cum de fruto." You repeat the name quietly, the syllables rich on your tongue. "It's a sort of candied fruit snack," he explains. "Figs or apples boiled into fruitum, that thick syrup made from reduced grape must. Sometimes he adds bits of honeycomb, sometimes nuts, sometimes a touch of pepper." You raise an eyebrow, and he nods seriously. "Sweet needs a little bite," he says, pressing a steaming fig into a rough square of cloth and handing it to you. The outside is sticky, almost dangerously so. But the inside, it's like velvet, soft, warm, dark with syrup, and balanced just enough by a surprising flicker of spice. It tingles your tongue, then fades into something that feels oddly elegant for a street snack. You look at the vendor again. He shrugs. "Even poor people like feeling fancy," he says. "Not everyone gets truffles." You laugh, and he laughs with you. Historians still argue whether street food like this was a reflection of daily necessity or quiet indulgence. Was it about surviving another day, or about giving ordinary people a taste of something special? Probably both. Rome was complicated like that. You linger near his cart a little longer, watching him stir and flip and feed the late-night wanderers like yourself. A woman with a baby strapped to her back takes 2 pieces, kisses his cheek, and disappears into the dark. A grizzled man, with 1 sandal missing, offers a bit of bronze and receives a single fig on a broken tile. Food here is currency, but also kindness. You move on again, stepping carefully over uneven stones and past shuttered stalls. The night is cooling now, gently brushing your skin with that thin, early morning breeze. Somewhere nearby, water trickles from a fountain. The crowds are thinning, but there's still one more scent that tugs at your curiosity. Smoke, charcoal, and something unmistakably meat-like. You turn a corner and find a small grill set up beside a wall covered in faded graffiti. The man tending it is older, wrapped in layers despite the heat, and staring down with solemn focus as he turns skewers of what you hope is pork. It smells incredible, savory and deep, kissed by flame and smoke and maybe a brush of vinegar. You ask what it is. He looks up and answers plainly, "Mystery meat. You want it?" You hesitate, and he chuckles. Could be goat, could be pork, maybe yesterday's lamb, maybe not. Doesn't matter once it's cooked right. He flips a skewer and adds, "I rub it with coriander, then wine, oil, a little garum, burn the bad parts off. The good stuff stays. You've come this far?" He slides one off the grill and hands it to you on a bit of rough bread. You take a bite. It's smoky, salty, and surprisingly tender. The spices don't try to impress. They just do their job. The bread is a bit stale, but that only sharpens the contrast. It tastes like something that was meant to be eaten with your hands, without thought, late at night. When you're tired and a little too full but still not ready to stop. You nod at him, he nods back, but he offers a warning as you finish chewing. Some meats out here aren't so kind. Look for glistening oil, rancid. If it smells too sweet, walk away. Tricks for tourists. You ask if he means foreigners, and he shakes his head. No, anyone not paying attention. He tosses another skewer on the fire, and you thank him as you back away, lips tingling from the garum spice blend. You think you'll remember that flavor for a long time. Whether that's good or bad, you're still deciding. As you wander farther from the grill, the alleys begin to narrow, the fires grow sparser, and the vendors fewer. But just when you think the night is done, you hear a soft chant, almost like a lullaby. Bread and peas, warm your hands, no need for cheese. It's a woman, seated cross-legged behind a little cart with a brass pot. Inside is a simmering stew, simple, earthy, and humble. Beside it are rough loaves of bread, still hot from a portable clay oven. She gestures toward the pot, offering you a taste with a chipped wooden spoon. You crouch beside her and accept the bowl. It's basic. Boiled green peas, a little olive oil, maybe some onion, but it's warm, comforting, like the culinary equivalent of a worn blanket. You dunk the bread into it and chew slowly, grateful for something gentle after the mystery meat gamble. "This is prandium," she says. "Morning meal, evening snack, doesn't matter, keeps you steady." She tells you how workers, servants, and laborers lived off meals like this, cheap and easy, requiring no utensils, eaten wherever you stood, no need for a table, just a bowl and some bread. You sit with her a while, watching the embers flicker in her clay stove and the steam rise in lazy curls. The world feels quieter now, slower. Even Rome seems to be catching its breath. You sip the last of the broth. Thank her with a nod, and stretch your legs as you stand. You've wandered these alleys for hours, followed your nose into half a dozen corners, and tasted more of ancient Rome than most citizens probably did in a week. And yet, your appetite for stories, for surprises, for strange flavors, still hums somewhere beneath the surface. Because you're beginning to understand that Roman junk food wasn't just food. It was identity, resilience, imagination, and maybe even a little rebellion. And as the final stalls flicker out for the night, you're ready to follow the next scent, wherever it leads. The coals behind you crackle softly, a fading lullaby to the night's banquet. You stretch your arms, feeling the weight of the meal, the warmth of the streets, and the slow ache of satisfaction in your legs. But you're not quite ready to leave. There's a flicker of light ahead, subtler than the others, almost hiding behind the corner of a crumbling wall. You drift toward it. A man stands behind a long, shallow table set with large glass jars. The torchlight glints off the thick, syrupy liquids inside, some dark, others golden, and one that glows green in a way that makes you tilt your head in mild suspicion. Each jar holds a collection of soft, preserved fruit. Quinces, pears, plums, and even thin slices of citron. Suspended in honeyed syrup and sweetened wine, they shimmer like edible jewels. He greets you with a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the calm of this part of the alley. For the late-night tongue, he says, for those who can't stop craving. He uses small tongs to pluck out a wedge of candied quince and sets it into a leaf bowl. It's sticky, heavy with syrup, and emits a heady floral note you can't quite name. You bring it to your mouth and take a bite. It gives easily, like warm butter, but it's intensely flavored, sweet, yes, but also oddly tangy and perfumed. The texture is smooth, almost luxurious, and beneath it all is the faintest hint of something boozy, like it's been kissed by leftover wine fumes. Cooked into fruitum, he murmurs. 3 times boiled, once left under moonlight, makes it tender, makes it romantic. You smile. Only in Rome would a snack be described as romantic. He continues to spoon out samples to other passers-by, workers, children, a woman carrying a basket of clay oil lamps. Everyone gets a bite, and no 2 pieces are quite the same. One plum is spiced with cloves. Another slice of pear tastes of fennel. A citron curl leaves your lips tingling with what might be mint, or possibly crushed laurel. Historians still argue whether these candied fruits were true delicacies or just a clever way to preserve overripe produce. Some records suggest they were gifts during festivals. Others imply they were sold cheap when fresh fruit wasn't available. But here, now, they feel magical, like little relics of sweetness trying to outlast the night. As you walk on, licking your syrupy fingertips, the alleys begin to widen again. The buildings open into a small, shaded plaza, where the flickering light plays gently against weathered columns and rows of shuttered windows. You stop in your tracks. Here, a man in a long tunic and wide belt is tending a different sort of setup. Instead of jars or pots, he's standing beside a wooden crate filled with what looks like flour. He notices your curious glance and gestures you over. Roman popcorn, he says with a grin, holding up a handful of puffed grains. We call it alica inflata, barley, toasted over fire until it bursts. Not like your corn, but close enough. You take a small paper cone and taste a few. They crunch softly between your teeth, dry, nutty, and slightly smoky. He adds a pinch of salt and crushed herbs, and the flavor deepens. It's not dramatic, not sweet, but it's addictively simple. You can see why people might eat it by the handful during a forum debate, or while watching a street performer juggle flaming sticks. The vendor nods as he sees you reaching for another bite. Good for children, he says. Won't ruin their teeth, won't attract flies. That's quite the endorsement. Beside him, a small girl is counting coins carefully into a clay bowl, and he gives her a large cone in exchange. She squeals with delight, clutching it like treasure, then skips off barefoot into the night. Her laughter echoes against the marble. The quiet plaza feels oddly comforting. For a moment, the world slows down. You sit on the edge of a shallow fountain and listen to the trickle of water echoing off the stone basin. Behind you, the vendor hums an old folk tune in a minor key. The wind stirs gently, carrying the distant scent of roasted nuts and crushed herbs. You tilt your head back and stare up at the stars again. Only a few are visible through Rome's warm haze, but they shine with quiet confidence. Somewhere in this ancient city, emperors are sleeping in silk, slaves are huddled beneath straw blankets, and bakers are already kindling the first flames for tomorrow's bread. And yet, here you are, In the middle of it all, licking barley crumbs off your fingers, the night is far from over. You stand and continue down another winding lane, this one lined with vine-draped balconies and shuttered windows painted in fading blues and reds. A warm, smoky scent drifts toward you, tinged with something oddly familiar. You round the corner and find two men crouched beside a shallow pit. They're roasting something inside, round, charred lumps nestled into embers, glowing faintly. One of them pokes the coals with a stick, exposing a bundle wrapped in fig leaves. The aroma deepens. They see you and wave you closer. Baked cheese, one explains. Soft goat's milk, wrapped, buried, and forgotten for an hour, then remembered again. He slices it open, and molten cheese spills out like golden lava. It's flecked with thyme and chopped dates. The outer crust is crisp and slightly ashy from the leaves. He tears off a bit of flatbread and scoops up a dollop, handing it to you without ceremony. You take a bite, it's divine. The cheese is tangy and soft, the herbs bright. The dates just sweet enough to balance the smoke. It's warm, grounding, like something meant to be shared by firelight and whispered stories. Popular with shepherds, the man tells you, licking ash from his thumb, and drunk philosophers. That makes sense. You sit beside them for a moment, passing the flatbread back and forth, nodding without needing words. The fire crackles softly, and someone tosses on another fig branch. The leaves sizzle, and the scent deepens again, thick and green and ancient. You think about how different this is from the way people eat in your own world. No plastic wrappers, no rushing, no menus, just heat, hunger, and whatever the earth decided to offer that day. It's imperfect, messy, sometimes a little suspect, but also honest, wonderfully so. As you say goodbye and dust crumbs from your tunic, one of the men calls out, "Don't miss the night snails, down by the baker's alley." You raise an eyebrow. Snails? Rome, it seems, still has more to offer. And so, with your belly full and your curiosity somehow still intact, you turn toward the baker's alley, your steps slow and contented, the night's journey nowhere near finished. You follow the winding path past quiet homes and shuttered bakeries, each window glowing faintly from within like sleepy eyes keeping watch. The street narrows again, and you feel the ground shift beneath your feet, from smooth stone to a more worn, uneven mosaic of brick and gravel. A few cats slink past your legs, clearly on a mission, and you decide that wherever they're going, you might as well follow. The smell hits you first, earthy, herbal, and just a little buttery. You find the source tucked between two faded archways, one barely standing, the other covered in ivy. A low cart, its wooden frame propped up on uneven wheels, sits next to a stone bench. The man behind it looks like he hasn't slept in a day. His eyes are sharp, but his tunic is stained, and his fingers glisten with oil. In one hand, he holds a long iron needle. In the other, a clay bowl full of shells, snails. They're not the delicate little morsels you might expect from a fine plate. These are plump, seasoned, and cooked whole in what smells like garlic, vinegar, and wild herbs. You step closer, and the man sees you. "Late snack?" he asks. "These are good. We fed them only lettuce for 2 weeks." That is not the reassurance you expected. He explains how Romans believed snails were best after a long, clean diet, fed nothing but herbs and greens so their flavor would be purified. Then, they were boiled with wine, seasoned, and served hot in their shells. No forks, no fancy sauces, just a sharp pin, a calloused thumb, and a willingness to eat something that stares back at you if you look too long. He hands you one on a stick, still warm, its shell smeared with a blend of oil and pepper. You hesitate. Then you twist the meat free with the pin, just like he shows you, and take a bite. It's tender, chewy, but not rubbery. The herbs are bright. The vinegar just sharp enough to cut the richness. It's not something you would crave again tomorrow, but tonight it fits odd, comforting, unmistakably Roman. The man chuckles softly. Rich men kept gardens just for snails, said they were good for certain desires. He winks, then returns to flipping the next batch in a smoking pan. Historians still argue whether snails were a poor man's food or a delicacy. Some say they were for peasants and soldiers, cheap protein that lived in your backyard. Others insist the wealthiest homes kept snail farms, feeding them milk and honey, plumping them for feasts that would impress even a senator. Like many things in Rome, the truth seems to live somewhere in the middle. You finish your snail, drop the shell into a woven basket, and thank the man with a quiet nod. He waves you off with a grunt and returns to his pan, mumbling something about overcooking the next batch. The street opens slightly ahead, revealing a crumbling public oven, still warm, though the fire has mostly died. Nearby, an older woman kneels beside a flat slab of stone, pounding something in a wide bowl. You approach slowly, careful not to startle her. She looks up with a smile and wipes her hands on a cloth. "Sesame and honey," she says, "for travelers, for gods, for you, maybe." In her bowl is a thick paste, golden, sticky, fragrant. She scoops some out with her fingers and spreads it onto a small cake of barley. The top is dusted with crushed seeds and what might be ground almond. You accept it, curious. The cake crumbles slightly when you bite in, but the sweetness fills your mouth with a soft, nutty warmth. The texture is grainy, but pleasant. It sticks in your teeth and leaves you licking your lips, trying to chase every last bit. She nods as you chew. "Old recipe, from Carthage. My grandmother taught me. Said it kept men awake during long nights." You look at her, surprised. "Awake?" She chuckles. "In the good way. Stories, laughing, singing. Maybe not sleeping, but not worrying either. You understand? Some snacks are for survival, some are for celebration, and some, like the sesame cake, are for remembering, for creating space between the hours where everything else pauses." You sit beside her for a moment, both of you quiet, listening to the distant sound of metal clinking and a baby crying 2 streets away. She hums softly and starts grinding the next batch with slow, rhythmic strokes. Eventually, you rise, thank her again, and continue on your way. Your footsteps are slower now, heavier. The night has thickened around you, blanketing the world in softness. Rome is quieter, but never silent. A dog barks in the distance. A door creaks open, then closes again. Somewhere, someone is still cooking. Your next stop is almost accidental. You turn into a side lane and find a table surrounded by clay jars, each one filled with different types of olives. Black, green, wrinkled, smooth, some soaked in vinegar, others glistening with oil and herbs. A boy barely in his teens waves you over, clearly eager to make a sale. "Olives from every corner of the empire," he boasts. "Some from Greece, some from Spain, some even from Africa." He offers you a small bowl with a few samples. One is tart, another bitter. A third melts in your mouth like cured butter. They're salty, of course, but also deeply earthy, like they were harvested with the wisdom of trees themselves. He tells you stories with each olive. This one, Roman generals brought it back from a battle. This one, grown only on hills touched by Apollo's breath. This one, tasted like sadness, my mother says, but she eats it anyway. You smile, chewing slowly, and let him spin his tales. Whether any of it is true doesn't matter. In Rome, flavor and fable walk hand in hand. You finish your last olive, thank the boy, and step away, the salt still dancing on your tongue. The moon is higher now, casting pale light over the rooftops, and for the first time in hours, your stomach sends a polite but clear signal, enough. But your heart isn't full yet, because the streets of Rome have given you more than snacks. They've given you stories, laughter, strange textures, secrets wrapped in fig leaves, kindness ladled into clay bowls, bites shared with strangers, and a new appreciation for how even the humblest foods can carry an empire's soul. You walk a little farther, deeper into the night, past sleeping vendors and curled up cats, the last crumbs of barley still stuck to your fingers. Somewhere, just ahead, something else is sizzling, and you're still listening. You walk with a gentle rhythm now, your feet more aware of the uneven stones beneath you, your belly comfortably full, but your mind still tuned to the whispers of the city. Rome doesn't shout at this hour, it murmurs. The fire has cooled, the oil has calmed, and yet the scent of something fried still teases the edge of the breeze. You follow it. It leads you past a row of quiet homes, their windows shuttered against the night, ivy curling lazily along their walls. The wind picks up slightly, carrying the softest trace of cinnamon and something crisp, something familiar. You find the source near an old marble column that leans slightly to one side, as if dozing. A young woman is seated beside a shallow iron skillet set over glowing coals. In her lap rests a wicker basket of what appears to be dough, small, rolled balls already dusted with flour. She lifts one and drops it into the oil. The sizzle is immediate and gentle, like a whispered greeting. You sit down near her, quietly, watching as she turns the dough ball with a wooden stick. It browns evenly, puffing up into something plump and round. She removes it carefully and sets it on a piece of cloth to drain before sprinkling it with crushed poppy seeds and a light drizzle of honey. She passes it to you without a word. The outside is perfectly crisp. The inside, still steaming, is airy and soft. The honey clings to your lips, and the seeds crackle just slightly with each bite. It's not overly sweet. It's not even entirely familiar, but it melts into you like something you didn't know you'd been craving all along. She finally speaks, voice low. My grandmother called these globuli for special nights, for remembering. You ask her what kind of nights. She shrugs, folding another ball of dough, the kind that don't come again. You sit with that for a moment. The glow from her fire dances against the nearby wall, creating shapes that shift and fade like thoughts you meant to write down but didn't. A pair of boys runs by laughing, barefoot, one of them carrying a small paper cone of something wrapped in fig leaves. The woman watches them go, her eyes soft. Sometimes I sell 20, sometimes only 2. Depends on the moon, she adds. You nod. That feels like a Roman kind of logic. Historians still argue whether globuli were celebratory festival food or everyday indulgences. Some recipes survived in ancient cookbooks, just barley flour, curd cheese, and honey, simple, modest, but somehow, in this moment, it feels richer than any feast. You thank her and rise, brushing flour from your palms. She nods, already folding another bit of dough, her rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. You leave her behind, the scent of warm honey lingering like a memory. The night has deepened now. The crowds are almost gone. A lone dog trots past you, carrying something in its mouth, a scrap of bread or perhaps a chicken bone, stolen from some distracted stall. You turn onto a quieter road lined with shops that have long since shuttered, their signs faded with age. The city here feels older, more settled, as if it remembers the days when Caesar himself may have passed through after dark. And then, a different smell, one you almost overlook at first, subtle, toasted, nutty. You trace it to a man seated beside a makeshift roasting tray, slowly turning a wide, shallow basket full of what looks like almonds. The coals beneath flicker quietly, their heat coaxing the nuts into something golden and aromatic. Every so often, he tosses in a handful of dried rosemary or a splash of grape must, releasing a brief puff of fragrant smoke. He sees you watching and gestures for you to sit. Almonds from Hispania, he says. Best in the world, or so they tell me. You smile and accept a small paper pouch. The almonds are hot, almost too hot to touch, but the scent is irresistible. You blow on one and bite down. The crunch is deep and earthy. The rosemary is delicate, just a ghost of flavor. And the grape must leaves a sweetness that lingers at the edges, like the memory of wine. He offers you another handful. Travelers like you need something to carry, he says. Olives spoil, bread crumbles, almonds wait. You nod. There's a comfort in food that keeps. He tells you that soldiers took them on the road, that merchants handed them out during long debates, that brides tucked them into wedding bundles, for strength, for luck, for chewing while thinking, and you're definitely chewing. He tosses more herbs into the pan and tells a story about a magistrate who tried to ban spiced almonds in the baths. Too many shells clog in the drains, he says with a grin. Didn't work. People just got sneakier. You thank him, slipping a few almonds into your pouch, and continue your walk. The streets here are softer, the firelight dimmer. You pass a shuttered temple, its steps littered with flower petals from a ceremony that likely ended hours ago. A single candle flickers in the doorway, watched over by a sleepy priest who barely acknowledges your passing. You're not looking for food anymore, not really, but Rome isn't done. Because suddenly, in the quiet of a side courtyard, you spot a table set with 3 bowls. There's no vendor, no fire, just a note carved into a bit of wood. Take one, leave one. Inside the bowls, a hard biscuit, a handful of dried fruit, and a piece of coarse salt. You pick up the biscuit, it's dense, unleavened, probably left over from a soldier's rations. The dried fruit is sour plum, chewy and sharp. The salt, sharp as glass on the tongue. Together, the 3 form an oddly satisfying triangle. Dry, sweet, sharp. You take a piece of each and sit on the edge of the courtyard fountain, chewing thoughtfully. Maybe this was a ritual, or maybe it was just someone's offering, left behind for whoever wandered by. Either way, it feels like a fitting pause, the kind of snack that doesn't delight so much as remind. You sit for a long time, watching the moon shift over cracked marble. The wind rustles olive branches above, and a few leaves float down like tired dancers. In the distance, a rooster crows early, unsure of the hour. You smile. Rome has fed you well tonight, not just with bites and sips, but with glimpses. Into kitchens that never closed, into lives that hungered for more than bread, into flavors that carried comfort, surprise, and sometimes a little bit of risk. And even now, with the streets nearly asleep, you feel like there's still one more story waiting around the next corner. You stand again, stretch, and tuck the last of the almonds into your pouch. The night isn't over just yet. The air has cooled just enough to raise goosebumps on your arms. The cobbled roads beneath your sandals now feel almost tender, smoothed by centuries of feet, carts, and lives lived loudly in daylight, softly at night. You've wandered for hours, but Rome has a way of making time dissolve like sugar in Mulsum. Even fatigue here arrives politely, one quiet step at a time. You continue past the empty courtyard, almond pouch rustling softly at your hip. when a gentle flicker catches your eye. Another stall, barely more than a wooden table balanced across two crates, stands at the edge of a quiet lane. The flame beside it is small, barely enough to cook anything, and yet the vendor tends it with care, adjusting the pot perched above the coals like it holds something precious. You approach, more out of curiosity than hunger, and the man looks up. His beard is long and wild, his tunic patched with more memories than fabric, and his eyes sharp but kind. Stewed leeks and lentils, he says simply. For those who don't need bread, just warmth. He lifts the lid of the pot, and the scent floats up, earthy, herby, a little sweet, a little sour. You inhale deeply. There's garlic in there, and coriander, maybe a splash of vinegar or wine. He ladles a bit into a shallow clay bowl and hands it to you. You sit on the edge of the stall, spoon in hand, and taste. The lentils have softened almost to a paste, and the leeks melt on your tongue. It's not exciting, it's not clever, but it's grounding. It tastes like something a grandmother would serve with both hands and a sigh. The kind of food that knows it won't impress you, but loves you anyway. You look up and ask if this is dinner food or a snack. He shrugs. Both, neither. Some people eat it before sunrise. Some after drinking too much. Some just need something quiet. You nod. This is quiet food. The kind you don't talk over. He sits beside you, sharing the last few spoonfuls of his own bowl. He tells you that leeks grow year-round if you're lucky, and lentils store forever. That's why poor men still get to eat like kings, he says. Kings just don't know it. Historians still argue whether humble meals like this were truly appreciated or simply tolerated. But there's no doubt. Dishes like this fed the bones of Rome when feasts ran out, when money dried up, when days ended longer than they began. And sometimes, warmth mattered more than flavor. You thank the man, returning the empty bowl. He gestures toward the pot and offers more, but you pat your stomach and smile. He nods, as if to say, "Fair enough." The road begins to slope gently downward now, leading you toward the river. The sound of moving water greets your ears before the sight does, soft and rhythmic, like a lullaby played on stone and current. As you near the banks of the Tiber, another scent rises. This one is different, faintly smoky, but bright. You find a woman seated on a low stool near the edge of the walkway. In her lap is a shallow pan, and she's roasting something that crackles and pops like tiny campfire fireworks. She looks up, catching your interest. Spelt cakes with bay and cracked wheat, she offers. Grilled on stone, better when the moon is full. You glance at the sky. The moon is, indeed, nearing its roundest phase. A lucky night, apparently. She presses a flat disk of dough onto a hot slab of stone set atop burning embers. It hisses, puffs ever so slightly, and begins to brown. She flips it with a deft flick, then sprinkles crushed bay leaf and a pinch of sea salt across the surface. She hands it to you, folded in half, warm and pliable. The outside is crisp where it touched the stone. The inside remains soft and chewy. You bite in. It's humble but fragrant, the bay adding a whisper of something ancient and floral, the cracked wheat giving it a grainy texture that clings to your teeth just enough to make each bite satisfying. It's not flashy, but it's real. She smiles, brushing flour from her palms. We used to eat these when we worked through the night, harvest season, spring plantings, sometimes after funerals. You pause. Not because we were sad, she adds gently, but because we were still alive. You chew slowly, watching her toss another round onto the stone for a man waiting nearby. He nods in appreciation without a word. Then you notice no one pays her. Coins are nowhere in sight. She doesn't ask. She just cooks. You offer a question without asking, why? She answers before you speak. Some foods are for selling, others are for remembering. You nod. Rome is full of ghosts, but also full of memory. These snacks, these stalls, these flavors, they aren't just filling. They're familiar to generations who never met, but still somehow share a taste. You walk along the river now, the spelt cake warm in your hand, the breeze rising from the water, cool and sweet. You pause at a low wall and lean against it, watching the moon ripple in the dark water. The city stretches quietly around you, breathing slow and deep in its sleep. Your thoughts drift to all the foods you've tried tonight, from barley cakes to fried dough, roasted chickpeas to mystery meat. You've tasted fear, comfort, laughter, and quiet wisdom, all through bites offered by strangers who didn't ask your name, only whether you were hungry. And in that, Rome feels timeless. You break off the last piece of the cake and pop it into your mouth. The bay leaf lingers just a moment longer, like a hand resting on your shoulder before slipping away. As you turn to leave the riverside, your eyes catch something unexpected, an older man seated near the water's edge, holding a rough parchment in one hand and what appears to be a small, glazed bun in the other. You recognize the bun, sweet bread baked with cheese and dipped in a syrup made from honey and rose water. He looks up and gestures the bun toward you. You sit. He breaks it in half and offers you the larger piece. You don't question it. The bread is dense but tender, and the rose water kisses your senses like perfume, delicate, strange, but not overpowering. It's the kind of sweetness that sneaks in rather than arrives loud. He says nothing, just chews, then turns back to his parchment. It's too dark to read anything, but maybe it doesn't matter. Sometimes you eat not to understand, but to feel. You finish your piece. He finishes his. No words are exchanged. You both rise and part ways without a goodbye. Rome has given you more than food tonight. It has offered you communion, intimacy without pretense, flavor without fanfare, a gentle reminder that even an empire built on conquest knew how to cook a quiet meal. The alley calls you back, lit now only by memory and moonlight, and still, you keep walking. The moon now floats high above the rooftops, pale and watchful, casting its soft silver glow across the city's ancient skin. The cobble lanes have grown hushed, as though Rome herself is exhaling after a long, flavorful evening. You move slower now, not from fatigue, but reverence. It feels like you're walking through a cathedral made of food stalls and firelight. You turn down a quiet lane and spot a flicker of orange in the distance. It dances low to the ground, like a candle in a bottle. As you approach, the scent changes, this time not sweet or smoky, but faintly floral, with a strange metallic undertone. Curious. You follow the scent to a booth, unlike any you've seen tonight. A middle-aged man, hunched and soft-spoken, tends a squat iron pot suspended over a carefully banked fire. The pot isn't bubbling. It simmers with the slow patience of something ancient and deliberate. Around it, stacked neatly on a linen cloth, are clay molds, small, shallow, each about the size of your palm. Inside, a soft gelatinous mass, barely jiggling, holds a pale golden hue. The man glances up. "Pear jelly," he says simply, "set with fish glue. For those who like their sweets, unusual." You blink. He chuckles at your hesitation. It's made from isinglass, dried sturgeon bladder. Common, really, perfect for setting jellies. You reach for one. The mold is cool to the touch. He helps you loosen it by running a thin strip of reed around the edge. It releases with a satisfying plop. The texture is strange, firm, but smooth. It wobbles in your palm like it has second thoughts about being eaten. You take a bite. The taste is unexpectedly elegant, soft pear, a whisper of wine, and beneath it all, a depth you can't quite name. It's not fishy, not exactly, but there's an earthiness that anchors the sweetness, keeping it from floating off into Candyland. You don't like it, the man says, though not unkindly. No, you reply, chewing thoughtfully. I think I do. I just don't understand it. He smiles. That's Rome. Historians still argue whether dishes like this were the height of sophistication or simply elaborate accidents. The fusion of fruit, wine, and animal-based gelatin seems both inventive and mildly alarming. But tonight, in this quiet lane, it feels like a whisper from a part of Roman life that didn't make it into marble or myth, a flavor meant for those who stayed out too late. You thank the vendor and step away, the texture of the jelly still lingering on your tongue, like a half-forgotten dream. A wind stirs the curtain of ivy beside a shuttered window, and you pause beneath it, listening. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries, then settles. A cart creaks in the distance. The hush is deep now. No fire crackles, no laughter spills from corners, only footsteps, occasional and soft. But there is still one more scent waiting for you. This one you can't place right away. It's faint, barely there, but it tugs at you with the insistence of a memory just outside reach. You follow it to a small alcove where 3 elderly women sit in a semicircle around a clay oven. No stall, no sign, no performance. Just 3 pairs of hands working in silence, shaping something small and pale onto thin leaves, maybe fig, maybe grape, maybe cabbage. One of them sees you watching and waves you closer. She gestures to a basket. Cheese wrapped in leaves, she says. Then buried in ash, not burnt, just rested. You nod. Of course. She hands you one, still warm from the oven. The leaf is slightly crisped on the edges, its veins browned and delicate. You unfold it slowly. Inside is a small pat of soft cheese, ricotta-like, flecked with herbs and crushed pine nuts. The outer edges have absorbed the leaf's flavor, and the underside carries the gentle charcoal kiss of embers. You take a bite. It's quiet, creamy, slightly tangy. The herbs are faint. Thyme, perhaps. Or maybe a cousin of thyme no longer named. The leaf offers a subtle bitterness that balances everything. It is, somehow, the gentlest thing you've eaten all night. You don't speak, neither do they. The 3 women just nod slowly, like you've passed a test you didn't know you were taking. They return to their work, fingers folding cheese into leaves with practiced grace, like it's more ceremony than cooking. You stand for a while, watching the repetition, the care. Eventually, you bow slightly, and they return the gesture, eyes kind but unreadable. You step away, not wanting to disturb the sacred rhythm of their midnight ritual. As you round another corner, the sky begins to lighten, not with sunrise, but with that first suggestion of it. The blue deepens, the shadows retreat, and the torches begin to die on their own. Rome is changing once again. You pass a shuttered shop with an inscription above the door, too faded to read. But beneath it, someone has drawn a small loaf of bread and a laughing face into the dust. A child's graffiti, perhaps. Or a baker's inside joke. Either way, it makes you smile. You find a fountain and sit on its worn edge. The water trickles softly, and for a moment, it feels like the whole city is holding its breath. You open your pouch, your strange little collection of snacks and offerings, an almond or two, a fig wrapped in waxed cloth, a square of barley cake, now slightly smushed, none of them beautiful, all of them alive with stories. You take a slow bite of the fig and let the sweetness dissolve into your thoughts. Tonight, you've eaten your way through the alleys of an empire, not through palaces or banquets, but through warmth shared in corners, oil spilled by accident, Spices traded across oceans and spread across bread with bare fingers. You've shared meals with gladiators, children, widows, and ghosts. You've tasted pride, thrift, invention, and comfort, all in the span of a few quiet hours. And now, the sun is almost here. Its light will bleach the shadows, chase away the magic. Rome by day will return, busy, blunt, loud. But the flavors of the night, they'll stay with you. In your mouth, in your memory, in the quiet place behind your thoughts where only certain stories live. You lean back against the fountain's cool edge and close your eyes. Not to sleep, not just yet, but to listen, to taste the silence that follows flavor, to carry it with you, gently, into the light. You rest at the edge of that ancient fountain, your body still, your senses quietly full. The warmth of the last fig still lingers in your mouth, and your breath, soft and slow, carries traces of every corner you visited tonight. The city stretches around you in a kind of reverent silence, Roman dawn approaching, but not quite here. The moment before morning, the hush before history reawakens. You rise. Your legs are a little heavier now, but Rome still has a few secrets left to share. You wander into one of the older neighborhoods, a district where buildings lean like old friends, where staircases curl without reason, and ivy grows bold along crumbling facades. This part of the city doesn't care to impress. It simply is. A gentle clatter draws you toward a stall so small it's practically hidden between two columns. An elderly man stands behind a wooden counter, arranging small bundles wrapped in parchment. He doesn't call out. He doesn't advertise. But the scent from his table weaves its way to you all the same. Warm nuts, toasted seeds, and something faintly floral. He glances up as you approach and says only, "Sesame, poppy, coriander, anise." You nod, intrigued. He unwraps one of the small parcels and reveals a dense, amber-colored bar. It looks sticky, but firm, pressed seeds and nuts bound together with honey and maybe a touch of defrutum. The kind of snack that lasts a long journey. The kind of thing you'd tuck in your tunic for a rainy day. Koopa seed cake, he adds. Good for the road, better with silence. You take a bite. The bar doesn't crumble. It resists, just slightly, before giving way to an explosion of texture, crunchy sesame, soft bits of dried fig, a crackle of poppy seed. The honey binds it all with mellow sweetness, and the coriander offers a citrusy hum at the back of your throat. It's a quiet flavor, deep, patient. He watches you chew and offers a knowing smile. As street vendors used to carry these in belts, cut off a slice with a knife and sell it by the finger's width. You glance at the tiny dagger on his hip and wonder how many slices he has sold tonight. Historians still argue whether these seed cakes were medicine or candy. Some called them strengthening, others indulgent. The truth, like the flavor, is somewhere in between. They weren't flashy, but they lasted. They filled your stomach and your pockets. You buy 2 more, slipping them into your pouch, and thank him. He nods once and turns back to rearranging his bundles, as though your visit was just one in a long line of many. Each traveler coming and going with stories written in crumbs. The sky now begins to shift, that faint, gray-blue bruising along the horizon, a hint of warmth underneath. The shadows grow shorter. You walk down another lane, the stones cold underfoot, the air damp with dew. Somewhere a rooster tries again. It's closer this time. You laugh softly, and then you hear it, the unmistakable crack of a crust, splitting under heat. Bread. You follow the sound like a moth to flame. At the end of the lane, smoke curls from a small stone oven built into the wall of a family bakery. The door is open, propped with a bucket, and inside, 2 Two women are pulling round loaves from the fire with long wooden paddles. Their sleeves are rolled high, their hair tied with string, and their hands move like they've done this for 1,000 mornings. They spot you and wave you in without a word. The air is rich with yeast and ash. The loaves are round, scored with the familiar X on top, and dusted with fine flour. You watch as one woman slathers a split loaf with soft cheese, then presses a few leaves of fresh mint into the center. She wraps it in a bit of waxed cloth and hands it to a man waiting near the door, who nods and vanishes into the dawn. You point, and she grins. Moments later, you're handed a warm roll, still steaming, the cheese melting slowly inside, the mint delicate and green. You take a bite. It's transcendent. The crust crunches beneath your teeth, crackling with the warmth of the oven. The inside is soft, still steaming, the cheese creamy and just beginning to stretch. The mint, unexpected, cool, clean, and perfect. You chew slowly, savoring the contrast of textures and the quiet kindness in the gesture. The woman sees your reaction and laughs, a quiet, satisfied sound, and pulls another loaf from the fire. A child runs through the doorway barefoot, grabs a broken end of bread, and vanishes just as quickly. No one stops her. The city is waking, and it begins with bread. The older of the two bakers leans on her paddle for a moment and says, "Bread remembers who you are. Doesn't matter if you're poor or proud. You come home to bread." You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. Historians don't need to argue about bread. Bread was everything: currency, communion, survival. From emperors' tables to slaves' rations, Rome ran on flour and fire. It still does. You sit on a low stool near the oven, finishing your roll in silence, watching the first golden sliver of sun break between rooftops. A cart rolls by outside. A gate opens with a groan. Someone whistles. The city begins again. But you are not quite ready to rejoin the noise. You thank the bakers, who nod as if knowing you'll return someday, and step back into the light. The scent of smoke clings to your tunic now, as does flour, and perhaps a bit of ash. You don't mind? These are souvenirs better than coins. You pass another fountain, this one awake now, with a few women gathering water in clay jugs. You smile as you walk by. They nod, but don't stop their work. You are simply part of the morning now, folded into the fabric of Rome. You glance back once more toward the ovens, toward the narrow lanes filled with stories and steam, and you think about everything you've tasted tonight. Not just food, but memory, craft, resilience, imagination. Rome's snacks weren't just for pleasure. They were how the city stayed alive, one bite at a time. And as the sun reaches the streets, you take your last step into morning, still chewing, still remembering, still hungry, for just a little more. The sunlight begins to settle across the rooftops like warm butter, pooling in corners and chasing the last of the night's shadows from the cobblestones. Rome, once hushed and flickering with firelight, now stirs with quiet confidence. Market doors creak open. Curtains flutter from second-story windows. The cadence of hooves and cartwheels becomes the day's new rhythm. And yet, for you, the night isn't over. Not quite. Your feet guide you almost on instinct, deeper into the belly of the city, past bakeries now bustling and butchers setting out cuts of meat beneath swatting cloths. There's no map in your mind, just the lingering aroma of a breakfast you've never known and a final taste that still evades you. You reach a square where the paving stones are warmer than they should be, already kissed by the morning sun. It's quieter here, as if the city's noise hasn't fully reached this corner yet. At the far end, beneath a linen canopy, sits a woman with a tray of what look like small, golden brown rolls. She's not calling out to customers. She barely moves, her hands resting on her knees, eyes half closed as if she's listening for something deeper than footsteps. You approach, drawn by the smell, a mixture of cinnamon, wine, and toasted flour. She gestures gently to the tray. Placenta dulcis, she says. Not the kind from birth, don't worry. Just an old name for a sweet layered cake. Flour, cheese, honey, bay leaves, passed down from the Greeks. We kept the recipe. And the name? You smile, cautiously intrigued, and she hands you a square wrapped in rough, waxed parchment. It's warm, soft at the edges, with a weight that promises richness. You bite. The crust is thin and delicate, but just strong enough to hold the layers inside. A soft, creamy cheese sweetened with honey, spiced with cinnamon and maybe clove, and balanced with a crisp bay leaf baked into the bottom like a secret. It's almost too rich for the hour, but your body doesn't argue. Special days only, she murmurs, brushing flour from her apron, or nights that feel like them. You nod. This night has felt like 100 birthdays and no calendar at all. Historians still argue whether placenta was a street food, a festival treat, or a temple offering. What's clear is that Romans weren't afraid of sweet and savory sharing a plate. They embraced complexity. They played with texture. They layered meaning into their food the same way they layered stories into their bricks. You thank the woman and sit on a nearby step, unwrapping the rest of the cake and eating slowly. The city breathes around you, but your world is quiet, every bite holding you in place like a whispered lullaby. You look around the square and notice something peculiar. There are no other vendors, no carts, no children darting between legs. It's as if this one table and the woman behind it were waiting just for you. And then, as if reading your thoughts, she speaks again. I cook these at night, serve them in the morning, and then I disappear. I'm not a merchant, just someone who remembers. You don't reply. You just hold the last bite of cake a little longer in your hand before finishing it, grateful in a way you can't name. When you rise, the tray is already gone. You walk on. The streets are growing louder now. The sun hits rooftops with full force. Bronze glints in the hands of guardsmen. Sellers bark prices. A boy runs past you holding a loaf nearly as tall as his torso. The city has moved on from the quiet of midnight. But you haven't. Not yet. You slip into a covered walkway, one of those long colonnades where cool shadows still linger. The shops here are finer. Marble counters, painted signs, fabric awnings drawn like theater curtains. But even here, food waits. A marble table bears a single dish, flatbread with golden apples on top, soaked in something thick and glossy. A fig merchant, stacking crates nearby, waves you over. Try that, he says. Cooked with defrutum and pepper. Sounds odd, but it's sweet and warm. They say it cures headaches. You take a slice, warm from the sun. The apples have softened into the bread, their edges browned and sticky. The defrutum has turned almost to molasses, clinging with a whisper of sourness beneath the sweetness. The pepper, unexpected, playful, a spark that tingles at the end of every bite. You nod, mouth full, and the man grins. Told you, Romans love surprises. He's right. Rome never gave you just one flavor. Everything was a blend. Honey with vinegar, cheese with seeds, bread with ash. Meals here weren't meant to comfort. They were meant to awaken. You finish the slice and thank him. One more turn, and the noise thickens. You step into a forum, buzzing now with buyers and merchants, guards and chatter, hands waving, feet moving, people shouting over chickens and coins and philosophy. The city's heartbeat is back at full strength, pounding like hooves on stone. But beneath it all, your own rhythm is slower, quieter. You pass by a stand selling honey cakes in molded shapes. Dolphins, pine cones, acorns. They're clever and colorful, but you're not tempted anymore. You've had the kind of food that speaks softly, not shouts. And still, something calls, a final alley. One more. This one is narrow and half in shadow, wedged between a dye shop and a butcher's stall. You hesitate, then enter. The sounds of the city fall away, muffled by stone and morning dust. At the end is a tiny wooden door, already open. Inside, a single table, a single man, and a pot of porridge. He looks up as you approach and offers a seat with a gesture. You sit. He ladles out a bowl, nothing fancy, just grain, boiled in milk, with a bit of honey and a curl of lemon peel floating on top. He sets it in front of you, then pours a splash of warm wine into a second bowl and places it beside yours. No words. You lift the spoon and take a bite. It's the simplest thing you've had all night, and it's perfect. Creamy, light, quiet. The lemon peel floats like a boat on still water. The honey only barely noticeable, more suggestion than flavor. You eat it slowly, one spoonful at a time. The man finally speaks. For ending things, not starting. You nod. He's right. This is a goodbye bite. You finish the last spoonful, set the bowl aside, and thank him. He just nods. You step back into the light. Rome is fully awake now. But inside you, the night is still glowing, warm with garlic and fig, flickering with firelight and fried dough, sweetened by barley cakes and roasted snails. You've walked through an empire with your mouth, and what you found wasn't just food. It was life, quiet, messy, glorious, and now it's yours. You step into the sunlight, its warmth now steady on your skin, its brightness pulling shadows into corners like old blankets being folded away. Rome no longer whispers. It hums, pulses, speaks in the clear voice of morning. And yet, you still carry the hush of the night inside you, like the last note of a lullaby echoing in your chest. You stroll past the bathhouses just as attendants begin to sweep the steps. Steam curls up from within, carrying the scent of olive oil, wet stone, and old sandalwood. You wonder how many conversations over breakfast happen there, between soldiers, merchants, politicians, slaves, maybe even over snacks like honey dates or fruit soaked in spiced wine. Down the street, another cart is being wheeled into place, its wheels groaning against the stones. A woman sets out shallow baskets of maridum, a pungent herb cheese paste mixed with garlic and vinegar. She spreads it onto rough bread, slicing each loaf with a thread, her fingers swift and practiced. You pause. She catches your glance. "Hungry again?" she asks with a knowing smile. "You look like someone who's eaten the whole city already." You laugh softly. "I have," you reply. "Almost." She hands you a bite-sized piece of bread slathered in the cheese. "Then have the breath of Rome, too," she jokes. You take it, and the flavor is immediate. Bold, sharp, tangy. The garlic is unapologetic. The herbs, parsley, maybe rue, hit with green intensity. Your mouth wakes up all over again. It's the loudest flavor you've tasted in hours. And strangely, it fits. She watches you chew, nodding. "It was a peasant's meal," she explains. "For farmers, for field hands." But even Cicero wrote about it. He called it humble and noble all at once. You nod, tears just barely forming in the corners of your eyes, not from emotion, but the strength of the garlic. Historians still argue whether maridum was meant to be medicinal, invigorating, or simply a way to stretch cheese with cheap greens. Whatever its origins, it's bracing, assertive, the opposite of subtle. Wakes you up faster than a slap, she adds with a wink. You thank her and move on, tongue tingling, lips slick with oil and spice. The morning air now tastes different, cleaner, clearer, like someone has turned the color up on the world. You reach the edge of a plaza where scribes are setting up their tables, laying out scrolls and ink pots with sleepy precision. A boy nearby balances a basket on his head, shouting about roasted chestnuts. The chestnuts are still hot, wrapped in palm leaves to trap the steam. You buy a small pouch and carry them as you wander, the heat sinking into your palms like a secret handshake. In another lane, a butcher cleaves through bones with rhythmic force. The smell of raw meat mingles with the sweet scent of mulled wine, which another vendor stirs in a tall bronze pot nearby. He pours you a sip from a ladle, wine, honey, pepper, and maybe even dried rose petals. It tastes like warmth with sharp elbows. Soldiers used to drink it before marches, he tells you, and after weddings. Same recipe, same headaches. You finish it in 2 sips, and the heat spreads through your chest like the sun itself. You wander again. You pass a stall selling libum once more, this time arranged like little offerings on polished stone, perfect circles of cheese bread, scored in neat lines, drizzled with burnt honey and crowned with bay leaves. You don't stop this time. You've already had that memory. It lingers. Instead, you keep moving, winding through quieter lanes as the noise of the forum fades behind you. Those are the streets where laundry hangs low, where pots clatter in windows, where cats stretch across sun-warmed tiles without a care for emperors or markets. You pause at a doorway, where an old man sits hunched on a stool. He holds a bowl of warm barley porridge, into which he stirs crushed walnuts and dried cherries. He eats with slow reverence, never spilling a drop. He notices your gaze and holds the bowl out. You look like you need a final bite, he says. You smile, sit beside him, and accept a spoonful. It's thick and hearty, textured but soft. The cherries burst gently between your teeth, and the walnuts crumble into a delicate earthiness that tastes like memory. It's simple, generous. You hand the bowl back, and he nods once, already turning his attention back to the slow work of chewing and remembering. You sit for a while, shoulder to shoulder with a stranger who has likely lived a dozen of your lifetimes. No words are needed. Rome has always spoken through its food. Eventually, you rise. Your pouch is nearly empty now, just a crumbled sesame bar and the corner of a honeyed fig. You feel no need to replace them. What you carry is far heavier. A belly full of stories, a heart made warmer by strangers, a mouth still tasting salt, spice, and ash. You walk to the edge of the city, where the stone path gives way to dusty road, and fields in the distance yawn wide beneath the morning light. You stop, you turn, and for a long moment, you just look. Rome stands behind you, golden and glowing, loud with crows and footsteps and the calls of vendors already halfway into tomorrow's profits. But beneath all that, stillness, kindness, thousands of hands that shape dough before sunrise, thousands of mouths that whispered recipes to children half asleep. You close your eyes and taste again. Chickpeas, cheese wrapped in leaves, sweet wine at dawn, garlic bread that bit back. The flavors stack and soften until they blur, like shadows melting into candlelight. And then, with a slow exhale, you step forward. No need to say goodbye. Rome will wait, and when you return, whenever that may be, it will greet you not with fanfare or feast, but with the quiet sizzle of something forgotten frying in oil, waiting. The road out of the city is quiet, its stones bleached pale beneath the rising sun. You walk without hurry, the soles of your sandals warmed by Rome's breath. Each step a soft goodbye, wrapped in olive-scented air. The city murmurs behind you, louder now, busy with life and routine, but in your chest, everything is still. Every flavor has slowed your heartbeat to match a different rhythm, one made not of hours or schedules, but of sensation. And then, just when you believe the culinary night has ended, another scent curls through the breeze like a beckoning finger. Smoke, but gentle, sweet, and earthy. It leads you to a small field just beyond the city's edge, where the grass grows in tufts and cicadas hum half-heartedly in the heat. There's a grove of olive trees nearby, their silver-green leaves whispering in the wind. Beneath one of them sits a man, kneeling over a flat stone set into the earth. Beside him is a fire reduced to embers, and balanced across it, a blackened skillet. The man stirs something slowly, carefully, while a bundle of herbs dries nearby. You step closer, the grass brushing your ankles. He looks up. "You're late," he says, not unkindly, but there's still some left. You sit opposite him without speaking. You've learned by now that in Rome, meals don't always begin with questions. Sometimes they begin with silence. He ladles a bit of the mixture onto a wide leaf and slides it toward you across the stone. You peer down. It's a porridge, but thicker, textured with bits of grain, slivered almonds, and flecks of herbs. The top glistens with oil, and steam rises like a curtain. You taste. It's warm, deep. The grain is toasted, giving it a nutty bite. There's honey in there, but not enough to make it sweet, just enough to soften the bitterness of the herbs, which might be fennel or something close. The oil carries the ghost of rosemary, and maybe a whisper of garlic, but everything is balanced. Each bite anchors you a little more firmly to the earth beneath you. You chew slowly, the way one reads a letter that matters. The man stirs the pot again. "This is for the end of things," he says. "We call it finis panis, the last bread." You raise your brows slightly. "It's not real bread," he adds, "just the feeling of it, the last taste before walking away. A meal for closure." You understand? Historians might not mention finis panis in their ledgers. Perhaps it was never formally written down, but traditions like this don't always need parchment. They pass through generations by way of hand, bowl, breath, quietly, kindly, repeated only when needed. You finish the porridge, and he offers you a small dried plum as a kind of punctuation. It's chewy, tart, and beautifully simple. The wind picks up slightly, brushing through the olive trees, and the scent of wood smoke blends with the fruit in your mouth. The man pours a little water from a clay jug into a chipped cup and sets it beside you. You drink. The water is cool, almost sweet, a perfect final note. You sit together, not speaking, around you. The world hums, the insects, the trees, the quiet shuffle of someone collecting firewood nearby. In the distance, a cart rattles along a dusty road, its wooden wheels echoing like a heartbeat across the countryside. Eventually, you rise. He doesn't offer a farewell, only a nod that feels older than language. You bow slightly in return and begin walking again, this time through the grove. The path narrows, winding through olive trees planted long before your birth and likely long after your bones have become earth. Their fruit hangs low and heavy. You pluck one, instinctively, and bite. It's bitter, very bitter. But that, too, feels right. Not everything sweetens before it's shared. You spit the pit into the grass and keep walking. You follow the grove until it meets the edge of a low stone wall. Beyond it lies a long road, quiet and sun-drenched, leading away from Rome. The horizon ripples faintly in the heat, and distant hills rise like sleeping lions, silent and watching. You pause here, resting your hands on the wall, looking back, not just at the city now hidden behind the grove, but at everything it gave you. barley mash clinging to your teeth, chickpeas fried so crisp they echoed in your skull, bread wrapped around cheese, wrapped around mint, wrapped around memory. And through it all, the people. Always the people. The woman who offered honey cakes by moonlight. The boy with popped grain in a paper cone. The gladiator who called you friend with his food-stained grin. The old man who shared walnuts and wisdom without saying a word. Rome's real empire wasn't its borders or its battles. It was its kitchens, its carts and pots and clay jugs, its burnt crusts and sweet plums and everything in between. You let out a slow breath. One last taste lingers. You reach into your pouch and pull out the final bit of food still tucked inside, a single honeyed almond wrapped in a bit of linen. You unwrap it gently and pop it into your mouth. It cracks softly. The honey coats your tongue. The almond's oils release a richness that brings everything rushing back. The streets, the steam, the laughter, the quiet. You chew slowly, then swallow, and then, finally, you let the hunger go. Not the memory, that stays, but the wanting. You lift your eyes to the road ahead and take your first step beyond the city. You don't know where the path will lead, but you know what you carry with you. Not just flavors, but the rhythm of care, the practice of noticing, the patience of those who cook for strangers simply because it's the right thing to do. You walk now with Rome inside you, not the empire, not the marble, but the morsels, and that is enough. The road curves gently away from the grove, hugging the hillside like a ribbon drawn by a steady hand. You walk without urgency now, your steps light, though not empty. The sun is higher, painting long shadows behind olive trees and stretching out the day in golden strokes. Somewhere above, a lark trills its spiral song, looping sound over your head like a farewell blessing. Though you've left the city behind, the taste of it lingers, not just on your tongue, but deep in your chest, in the soft place where memory makes a home. With each step, the echo of laughter from market stalls, the scent of oil-soaked bread, and the creak of clay lids sliding off simmering pots follow close beside you, like old friends who refuse to say goodbye. And yet, as the land opens into orchard and scrub, a new hunger forms. Not the hunger of stomach, but of thought. You find yourself retracing the path of every flavor. Not because you're still craving them, but because each one tells you something different about this place, about its people, its contradictions, its soul. Take garum, for example, that salty fermented fish sauce that invaded every dish like an over-enthusiastic dinner guest. It was bold, unapologetic, and, depending on the cook, either the height of sophistication or something best left for the seagulls. But it wasn't just a sauce. It was status, identity, a culinary handshake across class divides. Slaves tasted it. Emperors paid fortunes for it. Soldiers carried jars of it into battle. And that strange pear jelly, trembling in its clay mold beneath the torchlight, sweetened with wine, stiffened with fish glue. That dessert was more than a novelty. It was a story about patience, about the Roman obsession with process, about making the unfamiliar not just edible, but elegant. Even the barley porridge offered by that old man at the fountain wasn't just food. It was ritual. The act of stirring, of sitting, of passing a bowl without words. It said more than a feast ever could. Historians still argue whether Rome's love of culinary complexity reflected indulgence or necessity. Were these flavor pairings born from access or from limitation? Did the poor invent more because they had less? Did the rich borrow flavors from the streets, then dress them up with gold and garnish? You think about the gladiators eating barley mash after training, the olive vendor who spoke in poetry, The woman who fried chickpeas until they cracked like fireworks and handed them out with a grin, all of them feeding something larger than appetite. You stop at a bend in the road, where the stones flatten and a low wall overlooks a shallow valley. Below, sheep graze in lazy half circles, and a farmer, no more than a figure in linen, gestures slowly with a stick. The sun hits the grass at just the right angle to make the dew shimmer like crushed glass. You sit. Pulling the pouch from your side, you reach into its folds. You know it's nearly empty, but not quite. Your fingers brush the last crumb tucked deep in the corner. A bit of flatbread, slightly stiff, dusted in flour, bent from the journey. You lift it to your lips and take the smallest bite. It's dry, faintly salty. The herbs have faded, but there's still a whisper of bay leaf. You close your eyes, chew slowly, and let the world soften. The taste is barely there, but the memory is full. In your mind, you see the woman who made it, her sleeves dusted with flour, her hair tied back with string, the oven glowing like a second sun. You see her tuck mint into the fold of dough. Hear her laugh when you took your first bite. You taste her generosity. And that's the thing. You realize food is never just what's on the tongue. It's who made it, who handed it to you, who stood barefoot in the dust and stirred the pot or wrapped the fig or crushed the almond. Rome fed you. Yes, but it was Romans who nourished you. You lean back against the wall, feeling the warmth of the stone against your spine. A breeze lifts the edge of your tunic. You let it pass through you, carrying the last hints of olive oil and honey away into the morning. The day is full now. Birds wheel overhead. Bees bounce from flower to flower. Somewhere behind you, a child's laughter rides the wind. And though your journey feels like it's ending, you know it isn't. Not really. This wasn't a tour. This was a tasting, a beginning. Because once you've eaten like this, slowly, curiously, with your whole self, you don't forget. You carry it with you into kitchens, into conversations, into late-night cravings and sunrise breakfasts and quiet moments when you reach for something warm, not just to fill your belly, but to remember how it feels to belong. You rise again, brushing crumbs from your hands. The pouch is empty now, and that feels exactly right. You walk onward, no map, no rush, just the hum of the road beneath your feet, and the taste of Rome gently fading into the corners of your smile. The sun has climbed higher now, hanging confidently in the sky like a ripe fig just waiting to fall. Its light spills over the hills ahead, warming the stones of the road as though inviting you forward, not to rush, but to continue, gently, steadily, like the pacing of a quiet conversation. Your sandals tap softly against the path. Rome is behind you now, but not lost. The rhythm of its streets still echoes in your body. It lives in the way you notice scent, the way your fingers still seek the coolness of linen-wrapped food, the way your ears perk at the slightest sizzle from a cooking fire, even now, this far from the market stalls. You pass a roadside vineyard. The vines, gnarled and proud, stretch lazily across the slope like cats sunbathing. A few clusters of grapes remain, small and deep purple, late bloomers that have somehow dodged harvest. You reach for one, pluck it, and bite. It bursts. The sweetness is real, but not simple. There's depth to it, skin slightly bitter, juice slightly wild, as though the grape has its own story to tell, one that includes rain and drought, shadow and sun, patience and chance. You chew slowly, the skin catches in your teeth, and you don't mind. You're used to texture now. You understand that even the things that resist can still nourish. Just beyond the vineyard, a man walks toward you. He carries a basket on his hip and a curved knife in his belt. His tunic is patched and sun-bleached. You nod as you pass. and he lifts the basket to show its contents. Figs, fat ones, ripened until their skins have begun to split, revealing the pink flesh within. Want one for the road? He offers, smiling with that effortless Roman generosity. You accept. He selects a particularly soft fig and places it gently in your palm like a gift. No wrapping, no fuss, just fruit, slightly warm from the sun. You thank him and continue walking, holding the fig lightly, reverently, as if it were a blessing. When you finally take a bite, it's like sinking into velvet. The seeds crunch delicately and the flesh melts. There's honey in the flavor, but none added, just nature's slow magic. A fig doesn't beg for attention. It simply exists, beautiful if noticed, unchanged if not. You wonder how many of these were traded in alleyways, tucked into lunch bundles, handed between lovers or neighbors or gladiators waiting for their turn in the sand. A fig requires no knife, no fire, no salt, just a hand willing to share it. You finish it just as the road winds again, bringing you to the edge of a stone outpost. Not a town, just a small cluster of homes and a well shaded by an old canopy of vines. A woman sweeps her doorway. A goat nibbles lazily at weeds near a sun-drenched wall. It's quiet, but not empty. There's a bench beneath the vine shade, and you sit, grateful for the cool. From the house nearby, a scent drifts out. Warm grain, maybe oat or spelt, touched by steam. You hear soft voices, then laughter. And a moment later, a girl emerges carrying a round wooden tray. On it, 2 clay bowls, steam curling from both. She sees you and pauses. Without a word, she walks over and offers one. You hesitate, but only briefly, then accept. The bowl is warm in your hands, not too hot, just comforting. You inhale. It's a porridge again, but different, creamier, with the nutty aroma of toasted flour. There's a swirl of what looks like date syrup on top, and a few crushed almonds sinking just below the surface. You take a spoonful. It coats your tongue like a lullaby, rich, smooth, sweet, but not cloying. The syrup has depth, like it's been simmered for hours, and the grain has been stirred slowly, with care. It's quiet food, humble, but whole. The girl doesn't wait for thanks. She simply nods and returns to the doorway, where the second bowl disappears into the hands of someone you never fully see. You sit in silence and eat. The bowl is small, but enough. And when it's empty, you leave it by the bench, knowing it will be retrieved without fuss. Just another thread in a long weave of shared food, shared space, shared breath. You stand and stretch, feeling your muscles hum with the satisfaction of both movement and stillness. Rome may be behind you, but the road carries her forward, because Rome was never just a city of marble and maps. It was in the hand that offered bread, the child who crushed olives between fingers, the vendor who poured wine with a story instead of a price. You continue walking, fields stretch outward now, wheat and barley swaying under the morning breeze. You pass a small shrine nestled between 2 cypress trees. On its stone ledge sits a chipped bowl filled with offerings, crumbs of bread, a few withered grapes, and 1 perfect olive, not for gods who demand, but for gods who listen. You stop, touch the edge of the bowl, and leave behind the grape stem from earlier, the last trace of sweetness, now given freely. You move on, not much farther down the path. You hear the familiar sound of a knife against wood. A boy sits beneath a fig tree, slicing something onto a flat plank, balanced across his knees. As you pass, he looks up and offers you a sliver without speaking. It's cheese, goat's milk, soft, rolled in herbs. You take it, taste it, nod. It's bright, just slightly sour. The herbs are wild, maybe thyme, maybe something he picked without a name. You give him a fig in return, and he grins, tucking it into his tunic pocket like treasure. No transaction, just balance. That, too, is Rome. Not the balance of empire and conquest, but of one flavor offered for another. One memory handed over, received, kept. You walk farther still, into the widening world. The hills grow taller, the trees grow denser, the air cools just slightly. The road stretches on, waiting, and so you follow. Because you're no longer chasing food. You're following the quiet truth that food revealed. That all empires fade, statues crumble, maps change. But the small kindness of one hand feeding another, that endures, that lives on. And you carry it now, with every step. The hills ahead begin to rise more steeply now, and the road narrows between old stone fences stitched together with moss and lichen. Your legs ache, but it's the kind of ache that feels earned, like the quiet reward after a long, thoughtful meal. Rome, though now far behind in distance, walks beside you in sensation. Every flavor still a quiet echo in your bones. The air shifts, cooler here, touched by pine and rock. You breathe deeply and notice a change not just in scent, but in sound. Fewer voices, no distant clatter of carts, just the wind and birds you cannot name. And then, there it is again, that quiet, unmistakable smell of something roasting. Not meat, not bread, but grain, dry, toasty, maybe even smoky? You follow it without question, turning onto a small footpath that leads through a copse of cypress and oak. The trees thin, and you step into a small clearing dotted with clay ovens sunk into the earth. A woman, gray-haired and wrapped in layers of linen, stands at one of the pits, stirring something inside with a long wooden paddle. Beside her, on a wide slab of stone, sit rows of small, dark biscuits arranged like coins. She sees you and gestures kindly with her chin. No words, just that same old Roman invitation you've come to understand instinctively. Taste first. Ask later. You kneel as she places a biscuit into your hand. It's warm, rough to the touch, slightly oily, with a scent that's part barley, part ash, and part something spicy. Pepper, maybe? You take a bite. It's dense, chewy at first. Then it crumbles, revealing its warmth slowly. There's a touch of honey, a thread of cumin, a spark of vinegar that lingers in the corners of your mouth like a polite goodbye. You chew slowly, not because it's hard to eat, but because it demands that kind of attention. This isn't a snack to pass the time. It is time, folded and baked into something your teeth must earn. These are soldiers' rations, the woman says at last, her voice soft but steady. Panis militaris, travel bread, for those who leave things behind. You nod, mouth still full, and look at the biscuits lined on the stone. Some are older, already hardened into near rock. Others are fresh. They aren't pretty. They don't pretend to be. But they carry a kind of dignity that doesn't need adornment. She watches you finish, then hands you a second one, wrapped in a piece of cloth. Take it with you. This one isn't for eating. It's for remembering. You accept it with both hands. Historians still argue whether these dense travel breads were beloved or endured. Most agree they weren't made for joy, but for survival. Soldiers dipped them in wine, soaked them in stew, carried them across continents. They were meant to last, just like the empire that baked them. You thank her, place the wrapped biscuit gently in your pouch, and continue on. The trail steepens, and your pace slows. Stones slip beneath your soles, branches reach overhead like curious fingers. But with each step, you feel steadier, anchored not just by food, but by the shared humanity that offered it. You reach a small plateau where a spring trickles from the rocks into a stone basin carved long ago. The water is clear, impossibly still. You kneel and drink, cupping your hands, not rushing. It's cold, crisp, with the faint mineral kiss of ancient stone. You imagine legions drinking here, farmers, travelers like you, all strangers, bound by the same thirst. As you sit beside the spring, you reach again into your pouch. Inside, nestled among the folds, is that soldier's biscuit. You don't eat it. You just hold it, feeling its weight, not heavy, but meaningful. The ridges in its crust feel like memory etched into clay. You tuck it back gently and rise again. The sun is directly overhead now. The world is quiet, but awake. A hawk circles in the distance. Below you, a cluster of sheep moves like a cloud over the hillside. And just as you begin to think the road ahead holds only quiet, a sound returns. Laughter, light, like bells. You follow it down a narrow path that dips into a valley shaded by fig trees. At the center of the grove, a family gathers around a wide cloth spread over the grass. Jars of olives, slices of melon, a bowl of soft cheese, a dish of crushed nuts mixed with honey. A picnic. They see you, and before you can speak, a boy runs over and hands you a piece of flatbread. His fingers are sticky with fruit. He smiles and runs off again. The oldest among them, a man with a beard like a broom, calls out, "Sit! There's always room for one more." And so you do. You dip the bread in the honey nut mixture, spread the cheese, eat a slice of melon so ripe it collapses in your mouth. They don't ask your name, you don't ask theirs. The only questions here are you full? Would you like more? Did you try the olives? And you answer, yes, yes. Not yet. It's not a feast. It's not grand. But it's real. It's rooted. And it reminds you of every bite that came before. Because this generous chaos of sticky fingers, overlapping voices, past bowls, and laughter between bites is Rome, too. Not the city, not the stones, but the people who, in every corner of empire, still believe in feeding each other. You sit for a long time, maybe hours. The food disappears slowly. The sun tilts westward. The laughter fades into storytelling, then into quiet humming. When you rise, you thank them. A dozen hands wave. Someone slips a fig into your palm. Another presses a folded leaf into your pouch, a bundle of mint, still wet with dew. You leave the grove and climb again, this time into the hills with the full weight of kindness tucked between your ribs. Rome, it seems, hasn't ended. It's just changed its clothes. And it walks with you still. The hills rise gently now, no longer steep but steady, as though encouraging rather than testing you. You follow a trail cut not by roads, but by footsteps, worn into the earth by time, sheep, sandals, and perhaps the curious like yourself. The sky stretches wider here, a soft canvas brushed with streaks of pale cloud, and the air smells of time, warm dust, and old wood. You walk slowly, not out of fatigue, but in reverence. You've eaten Rome, not the marble version, but the soft, fragrant, ash-dusted one that sits in clay bowls and rides in linen wraps. And now, as your feet press onward, you're not seeking more. You're carrying it. The breeze picks up, cooler now, pulling your tunic gently, as if reminding you to stay present. Ahead, at the crest of a gentle slope, you spot the remains of a crumbling outpost. Just stone bones now, half a wall, a doorway to nowhere, and the ghost of what might have been a hearth. You step through the broken archway and find a patch of shade beside a low wall, its top flat enough to sit. You do. The wind hums, somewhere in the valley below. A flute plays, a high, slow melody, rising and falling like breath. You reach into your pouch for the wrapped soldier's biscuit, the panis militaris, and place it on the stone beside you. It's still warm from your body, still firm, still whole. You won't eat it. Not yet. Instead, you unwrap it slowly and set it in the sun, letting the light catch the rough ridges of its crust, letting the scent of grain and vinegar and thyme drift into the open air. A quiet offering. This was never about hunger. You lean back, eyes half closed, and reflect on what this journey became. Not a tour through dishes, but a walk through what it means to feed and be fed. You remember the boy juggling chickpeas in a paper cone, the woman frying dough over embers, the quiet priest offering water and figs, the gladiator who shared barley like it was gold, every flavor, every bite, a kind of conversation. Historians still argue what made Rome endure: roads, aqueducts, legions, laws. But sitting here, with sun-warmed grain in your hands and the wind thick with thyme, the answer feels simpler. Rome fed people, not just with food, but with presence. A fig handed without price, a cake baked without a name, a cheese wrapped in leaves and offered without a question. These were not gestures of power. They were the daily rituals of care, the empire's true foundation. You unwrap the leaf bundle from the picnic, the one pressed into your hand before you left the grove. Inside, the mint has wilted slightly, but the scent is still sharp. It fills your nose, clears your thoughts. You tear a leaf and rub it between your fingers, letting the oils stain your skin, releasing one more flavor into the air. The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows from the broken stones. Light pools on the far ridge, golden and low, like spilled mulsum. You take the soldier's biscuit and break it, gently, in half. One piece you leave on the stone, a gesture, not to any god or ghost, but to the idea of thanks. The other half, you raise to your mouth and take the smallest bite. It's dry, coarse. The flavor is humble, but it's not empty. It speaks of fire and flour, and hands that shaped it long before yours ever touched it. And for a long time, you just chew, not rushing, not swallowing, tasting not just the bread, but every story that traveled with it. A hawk circles above now, silent and wide-winged. Below, the flute fades into stillness. Somewhere behind the hills, Rome continues, its markets reopening, its bakers wiping flour from their eyes, its vendors counting the last coins of the day. But you are here, on the edge, still. You stand, brush the crumbs from your tunic, and gather the cloth wrapping. You tie it gently around the remaining leaf and slip it back into your pouch, not as food, but as memory. There is no hunger now, no craving, no unfinished taste, only quiet fullness. And that, in the end, is the truest flavor of all. The road continues beyond the ruins. You walk it without needing to ask where it leads. Because now, wherever you go, you understand something you didn't before. To eat is not just to fill the body. It's to join the world, to be part of the rhythm that says, I am here, I am alive, and I remember. You walk until the stone turns back to soil, until the scent of time fades, until your feet no longer echo on Roman roads, but blend into paths that belong to no empire, only to the earth itself. And still, you carry it. The chickpeas, the honey, the garum, the laughter, the silence, all of it, all of Rome, one bite at a time. And now, you find yourself at the edge of everything. The sky is settling into dusk, that tender space between light and shadow, where even the air seems to hush. You walk a little slower, letting the stillness rise around you like warm water. Your shoulders soften. Your breath, easy now, flows with the rhythm of the earth beneath your feet, somewhere far off. A dog barks once and then falls quiet. A breeze rustles through dry leaves. The sound is soft as a whisper in another room. You pause near an old fig tree and lean gently against its trunk. The bark is cool, solid. You close your eyes for a moment, and there it is again. Flavor, memory, presence. Not just the taste of food, but the comfort of having been fed, of having been seen. You remember the soldier's bread, the woman at the oven, the child with sticky fingers. Every bite along the way was its own kind of lullaby, calling you back to yourself. As twilight deepens, the last light folds over the hills like a worn blanket, wrapping the world in quiet. You exhale. There's nothing left to chase now. No story left unfinished. Just you and the soft night and the peace of having been part of something older, gentler, and deeply human. Let your thoughts drift. Let them settle like crumbs on a clean table. You are full. You are safe. You are home. End of script. Sweet dreams.